Welcome to the Peaceful Parenting Podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Rosensweet, mom of 3 young people, peaceful parenting coach, and your cheerleader and guide on all things parenting. Each week, we'll cover the tools, strategies, and support you need to end the yelling and power struggles and encourage your kids to listen and cooperate so that you can enjoy your family time. I'm happy to say we have a great relationship with our 3 kids. The teen years have been easy and joyful, not because we're special unicorns, but because my kids were raised with peaceful parenting. I've also helped so many parents just like you stop struggling and enjoy their kids again. I'm excited to be here with you today and bring you the insight and information you need to make your parenting journey a little more peaceful. Let's dive into this week's conversation. Hey all, welcome back to another episode of the Peaceful Parenting Podcast. Today's episode is a guest expert interview with Karen Young. She's a psychologist, and we are going to be talking all about anxiety and aggression. If you've been following me for a while, you've probably seen me share an article from her wonderful website, heysigmund.com, or you've seen me recommend the book Hey Warrior, which is a kid's book all about anxiety. And I am just so pleased to share this interview with her because it was jam-packed with so much good information, so many strategies and practical advice that you can start using right now. And it was just so beautifully aligned with everything that we teach in peaceful parenting. One thing that she talks about a lot, you'll hear, is being able to co-regulate and stay calm when our child is having a hard time. And I just want to remind you that I have a free resource for that. If it's tough for you, you can go to sararosensweet.com/yelling, and I have a free e-course called How to Stop Yelling at Your Kids. And it's all about staying calm when things are hard. And you'll hear from Karen that that's one of the most important things that we want to really focus on. So I'm not going to tell you more about it because I want you to hear straight from the beautiful Karen Young and everything that she had to say. So let's dive in and hear this interview. Hey, Karen, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me.
And it's morning for you and evening for me. And I'm so grateful that we were able to find a time that worked for both of us. And luckily before the time change, because then I think it gets even trickier. So you're in Australia.
Yes. No, I am. And I'm really excited about the topic we're talking about.
Yeah, I'm so happy. I told you before we started recording, I've been following you for a long time. I recommend your articles and your website, Hey Sigmund, all the time. I recommend your book, Hey Warrior, all the time. We'll put a link to all of those in the show notes. But before we dive into our topic of anxiety and aggression, can you just tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and how you got started with being an anxiety specialist?
So I started as a psychologist. I was working in private practice for a long time with a lot of families and children. Then I went into tertiary teaching, which I loved, but still in practice and practicing with groups. When I was in private practice, I actually realised that I would have children for 45 minutes a week, sometimes if I was lucky. And it didn't take me long to realise that was important, absolutely a really important support for some kids, but that is nowhere near where the guts of the healing happens. The healing happens in their everyday interactions with their everyday adults. So then I started turning to this work, really working with parents and the important adults who support children every day.
Yeah, I often get questions. Well, do you meet with our children? The clients that I work with, no, I don't meet with the kids. You're the one that's best suited to support your child. So I support you so you can support your child. It sounds like that's what you realized also in your work.
That's exactly what it is. And now that's what I do with parents, schools, organisations. Any important grown-up in the life of a child has enormous capacity to really strengthen children, and especially through anxiety.
Yeah. And anxiety is such a common thing that comes up for so many families these days. And I think especially with the rise of the last few years with COVID and, different things happening in the world, it's just becoming even more common. So let's talk about a specific flavor of anxiety, if you could call it that, because I think when a lot of folks think about anxiety, they think about, I won't go in the water, or I won't have a sleepover, or those sort of avoidance. That's the way that anxiety sometimes shows up, is in that avoidance or the actual literal worry or fear. The article that I share the most from your website is, I think it's called Anxiety or Aggression, when anxiety shows up as tantrums or meltdowns.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the part of anxiety that parents don't understand as much. And I know it's just really common. So can you just talk,
Yeah.
where should we start with anxiety and aggression?
Yeah. So what we have to remember with anxiety is it's exactly what you said. We have an idea of anxiety as looking like that shrinkage and avoidance. But what we have to remember is the body has two reactions to anxiety. Anxiety is anything that might make a brain register threat. And threat doesn't mean it's actually unsafe. It's about what the brain perceives. So threat can come in the form of being too tired, too hungry, being interrupted, not feeling connected to you, or it can come in a relational form, like not being validated, not feeling disconnected from you, feeling separated from you, missing out on something important, anything that comes with any threat at all, even the tiniest, even if it's not likely to happen, even the tiniest threat of anything that might bring failure or judgment or humiliation. We have to remember for children, this doesn't have to be big triggers. This is the stuff that we face every day, but they don't have the life experience yet, their brains don't, to recognize that, it's not a big deal. And even the things that don't seem like a big deal, that look like they might be triggering a fight or flight response, it's actually often not even about what's in front of them, but about what has happened that whole day, that whole week, everything their nervous system is carrying. And then we ask them to pack up, or we tell them it's fish for dinner, but they really want chicken, and then they're exploding into a big tantrum, into big anger, big aggression. And it looks like we have kids who can't handle stuff. It's often not that. It's that they're handling a lot from today or this week. With anxiety, we tend to go big or we go small. So we're really familiar with the small, which is the avoiding, the pulling away from things, the clinginess. But we also have to remember that a really valid response from the body is to go big. And that can look like anger. Anger is very energizing. We're powerful when we're angry. So it's all about getting our bodies ready to fight or run away. Really valid response. This is not bad children. This is not bad parenting, but a really normal response from a brain that for some reason is feeling overwhelmed or has registered some sort of something that's not right now.
There are a couple of things I want to pull out of what you just said. One is that anything that that anxiety is something that registers as a threat to the brain or the nervous system, right? And what I think is really key, and you mentioned a little bit, but it just a child's own overwhelming feelings can be that threat, right?
Absolutely.
So as you said, I didn't want fish for dinner, I wanted chicken for dinner, and then combined with, in what peaceful parenting we call the full emotional backpack, or those low resources. Either one, like the tensions and stresses from the day that have built up, or I'm tired or hungry, or don't have the resources to deal with what you're asking me for. So really, for parents, when they do see that big reaction, what are the steps that you suggest that parents take when they do see that big reaction, and they maybe make a note to themselves, oh, here's that threat response, the fight response that Karen was talking about on the podcast?
Yeah. So the first thing to recognize is when a child is in fight or flight, that is actually meant to raise fight or flight in us as their important adults. And that's there for a really good reason. It's there because if there actually was a danger, we would want to have the physical capacity to fight for them or flee with them. So that all happens for a really good reason. So when children are in distress, it raises distress in their attachment adults. The problem isn't the response. The problem is that we also have full emotional backpacks that we're carrying, and we don't know what else is in theirs. So when we feel the distress, the first thing we have to, and we will start to go into fight or flight. That's instinctive. That's normal. And for sure, sometimes as parents, it's really understandable that we might sometimes instead, and the most loving, calmest parents will sometimes fight with or want to flee from their children. So that's fight or flight working in a different way, but it's all really normal. This is not bad parenting. This is how it's meant to be.
Because it was evolutionary protective, right?
That's exactly it. So what we need to do, the problem is that now in our modern world, they're not really in danger, but it doesn't stop that threat response coming up. or that threat response coming up in us to organise us to protect them. So what we need to do first is actually calm our own nervous system where we can. So regulate our nervous system just by taking a strong, steady breath. If you have room for a pause, it's okay to take a pause and say, okay, I just need to get a drink of water and I'll come back. If it hasn't hit that full level yet, if you can see it starting to rise and you need to take a moment to calm your nervous system, that's okay, as long as you do it in a way which doesn't make them feel like they're in trouble or any shame. It's just, I just need to grab a drink of water and I'll come right back. While you're grabbing a drink of water, take a few strong, steady breaths. Come back. That is going to regulate your nervous system and put you in the best position to be able to co-regulate with them. So we breathe and we be with.
Can you talk about co-regulation for a moment?
Yeah. So what co-regulation is children can't self-regulate. They just don't have the capacity yet to self-regulate. And we actually can't teach children to self-regulate. They actually have to experience it. It's like playing the guitar is one of the things I say. We can watch the best guitar players in the world and we can watch all the YouTube videos about how to play the guitar. But until we've actually played the guitar, we will not develop the pathways in our brain that mean we can play well. We'll play, but it might not be well. So with self-regulation is the same, is we can teach all the self-regulation skills, but it's not, and we need to do that. We must do that. But the way they actually truly learn is by having an adult, a calm adult, meet them where they are, and gently bring that nervous system back to calm. If you think of it, it's kind of like us using our nervous system to recalibrate theirs. So we calm ours, it's like a tuning fork, and then we bring theirs home. So we look for the ways to self-regulate and we look for all the strategies and the tools, but it actually is already in us and it already has been. The most powerful way to calm, and this is not just us, this is all mammals, the most powerful way to calm our nervous system is with another nervous system that is calm. That is co-regulation. It is how we build those vital neural pathways that help children go from big feelings back to calm, big feelings back to calm. So co-regulation, what we're doing is we're self-regulating to bring their nervous system back home to calm. We do that by making sure our nervous system is calm. We can do that by breathing or just holding ourselves, giving our arm a rub. And then we might have to go somewhere and splash cold water on our face. That's another way to calm the nervous system. Or if we're in front of them and we still have the capacity, we just take some strong, steady breaths, calm our nervous system, and bring theirs home. Ultimately, we want them to be doing that, but they're not going to be able to actually do strong, steady breathing unless they've practiced it lots and lots when they're calm and actually developed that strong neural pathway themselves. It's why if you tell someone who's in big feelings to take a breath, they're not going to be able to do it because it's actually...
Or tell them to calm down.
It's the worst, right?
It's the worst, yeah.
Because the brain doesn't want calm right now. It wants us activated for fight or flight. So that can sometimes register as bigger threat. So what we have to do is calm ourselves. If we can, we might say to them, I'm going to take some strong, steady breaths. Do you want to take some with me? And we might hold their hand, touch their back. Touch is very calming. If they're open to it, if they're little, we might just pick them up and sway. Anything with rhythm is very calming for the brain. If they're not interested in any of that, and if they're really in full fight, they won't want to do that because the brain will just be focused on fighting to stay safe. The brain thinks we're about to die and it's going to fight.
Yeah.
And the rational part of the brain isn't available right now. So it's all primal, it's all instinctive. So we just have to breathe and be with. Validate if they're open to it. But validation, you want to avoid neutral voices and neutral faces because that can sometimes feel like we're just reading a script and it can sometimes register bigger threat. So to meet them where they are. Oh, I know you really don't want... I know how much you wanted chicken. I get it. I know. And I would be disappointed too. I get it. And then we just hold it. We don't need to do anything else. Otherwise, if they say, just stop talking, then we just feel what they're feeling. And we do that with nonverbal. So we feel it in our face. Let them just see you feeling what they're feeling, but stay calm and regulated. And then we wait. We might need to hold a boundary. So we might need to be firm on the behavior, but always gentle on the relationship. I know how angry you are. It's okay to be angry at me. No, I'm not going to let you hit your sister. No, I'm not going to let you speak to me like that. I'm right here. I'm right here when you're ready. I'm right here. I know how angry. No, I'm not. No, I'm not going to let you, whatever they're doing, but go straight back to the relationship. So we bring in both. We have to bring in leadership and a loving presence. It's not one or the other. We do both, but we might have to quickly flick between the two. Then we wait for the storm to pass and think of it like what they're looking for is an anchor. An anchor. An anchor stays grounded and attached the whole time. That's what we're doing here. When their brains come back to calm, and of course we have to keep everybody's body safe. That's our thing. So that's why we do have to hold a boundary. When their brains come back to calm, then we have the conversation. But when that happens, we must separate them from their behavior. So you are such a great kid. I know that was hard right just then, wasn't it? I know you know that it's not okay to speak like that or throw or whatever they're doing. How can you put this right? If they might have hurt a sibling or they might have done something, we can say, how do you think you might put this right? We have to offer ourselves as a resource. Remember, their stress tanks are already full. They're only just starting to come back down. So they might not yet have full capacity to just think about how to put it right or be able to do it. So we offer ourselves as a resource. We say, do you need my help? Do you want me to help you come up with some ideas? But we take all the shame away. There is no shame. And then we can have a conversation. What happened? What might you want to do differently? What can we do differently next time? And talk about those. And then we talk about how to move forward. There's never a time for punishment. That's not going to do anything.
Is it okay to wait a little bit if, when you're talking about the repair, how we make it right? If your child's still upset and dysregulated, it doesn't have to happen right away, right?
No. Take as long as you need. They're not going to forget. If they've really dysregulated before school, I'd make sure they're connected with you before school, but we don't have to have the conversation then. We can have it tonight or this afternoon when they're back to calm. They're not going to forget about what happened this morning. What we want to do is make sure they feel connected to us as soon as possible and repair that. But we can put the conversation off, I don't think now's the time to talk about it. We can talk about it later. Right now, I just want to hang out with you, so that they feel really cozy and safe. It doesn't matter when the conversation happens. And those conversations, they happen incidentally often anyway. They know they've done something wrong. They know. They might need help with how to put it right and ideas for what to do, but it doesn't matter when that happens.
Yeah, and I love the idea of the repair. As you say, putting it right is also for them to feel like a good person again.
Yes, absolutely.
Because they, as you said, they know they've done something wrong, and then they take some of their own guilt away of feeling like they can, maybe move towards fixing it.
Yes, absolutely. And empathy and compassion. We, again, can't teach empathy and compassion. For children, if we want to grow empathy and compassion, they actually have to experience it from us first. So that was tough for you, wasn't it, bud? Or that was tough for you, wasn't it, my darling? Yeah, it's hard when we don't get what we want. I know you're such a great kid, I know, and then we move into it. But when they feel us empathizing, that's how we also develop the empathy and compassion within them.
I want to ask you something about that, but first I want to back up a little bit to something when you were talking about co-regulation and, about soothing a child when they're upset. I think that most of us have experienced that with babies, and that we sort of naturally can give more empathy and compassion to an upset baby, a baby who's crying, and we move into that soothing and patting and rocking and making those noises. And I think that we have to remind ourselves as kids get older that they still need that same kind of soothing, but it can be, when you have an 8-year-old who you can play chess with and who can carry on a conversation about Minecraft, it can be hard to remember that they're still really little and they still need our help.
Absolutely. And I'll also say, as adults, we need the soothing of other people as well. It never stops. We never stop needing it. We never want to stop their big feelings. We want to stop what they do with their big feelings, but we don't want to stop their capacity to feel. So we don't want to give them any reason to think they have to turn off the big bad feelings, because then we're also messing around with the big good ones as well, and we don't want to do
Yeah.
that. So that, I think, part of the thing with babies is we also don't blame ourselves. So we go, well, of course babies cry because that's what they're meant to do, and how else are they going to get our attention? How else are they going to let us know? Feelings aren't breakage. Feelings are there to make sure we're taken care of. And so feelings happen to actually recruit us, to bring us closer so we can take care of them. We do it as adults when we're really upset. It's not a manipulative, conscious thing. It's automatic. It's instinctive. It's a call for people to come closer. So when children are really angry, something else about anger, anger is a very valid emotion, but it is actually the only emotion that doesn't exist on its own. It exists to hold other more vulnerable feelings in place. So what we have to say when we see an angry child is, if we took that anger away right now, what is the feeling that would be there if it was
What's
allowed?
under the anger?
What's under it? And I would bet so often it's a brain that doesn't feel safe enough in some way. Doesn't mean you're not safe, doesn't mean your house is not safe. They might be missing out on something, they might be interrupted, but that all counts as threat to a brain. Any big behavior is a sign of a brain that doesn't feel safe, and a body that's getting ready to respond to that with fight or flight,
Mm-hmm.
running away. What does that young brain need in that moment? Safety. How do we bring safety? Through connection, through co-regulation, through relationship. And it's why all the traditional disciplines don't work. The thing about having an 8-year-old or a 5-year-old or even a 15-year-old is there's this idea in our society that they should be able to regulate by then. They shouldn't be doing this stuff. What are the parents doing? And I think as parents, we feel the tut-tut of the world and the judgment. They're actually doing exactly what they're meant to be doing, which is inviting us in to co-regulate, so we have the opportunity to build those neural pathways. I will say sometimes it will end with parents screaming and kids screaming. That is also going to happen. So again, that's, instinctively we can't be everything they need all the time. As long as we repair it as quickly as we can, not sell it as their fault. Well, I wouldn't have done this if you didn't do this. We own it. We talk about it. I'm really going to work on this. I know that must have been awful for you. I wish I didn't yell. Let's both work on this, hey? You're a really great kid. But even as adults, we sometimes, go big.
I was going to say that, even the 45-year-olds sometimes get hijacked by their big feelings. And when you were talking about the brain, that this behavior is the response of a brain that doesn't feel safe. I love, in one of your articles, I use this all the time now, your analogy of the smoke alarm that goes off in the kitchen when the toast burns. And it's that I think that's really helpful to highlight that the whole question of safety is, it's our alarm system in our brain can't tell the difference between a real threat and a perceived threat, like
Yes.
fish for dinner versus, a tiger that's just jumped out at you.
Yeah.
And I think it's through our co-regulation that kids learn, oh, that's not really a threat.
Yeah.
Is that the
That's
idea?
exactly it. That's exactly it. And I think that's in Hey Warrior. But what it is our amygdala, which is the part of the brain that's always looking for threat. It can't tell the difference between true danger and not true danger. It's like a smoke alarm. A smoke alarm will squeal just as loudly if it's smoke from burnt toast or smoke from a fire. It can't tell the difference. But we want the smoke alarm, and we want it loud, and we want it working. You don't want a smoke alarm that's quiet all the time. We don't want a child who's quiet all the time, because we want to make sure that they're able to call us in when they need to. Sometimes the brain just registers such big threat and with such big urgency because it can't tell. It's just reading smoke. It can't tell where it's coming from. So it just reads such big urgency there. It's calling us in to say, hey, there's something I need a hand with here. Children, in the same way big physical loads aren't good for young bodies, big emotional loads aren't good for young brains. And so what they do is they go into big feelings, and we all have big feelings. It's one of the ways the amygdala keeps us safe. So when the amygdala is really active, which is what happens with anxiety, they might have big tears, they might have big anger, sometimes anger that looks like big tears, but it's all a brain that doesn't feel safe. We do the same. And it does that to recruit support, to bring us closer. It is not a bad child. It is not bad parenting. A parenting isn't about what they do. It's about what we do. So their behavior is not a reflection on our parenting. Their behaviour is a reflection on a child who is struggling right now with an overwhelm of feelings, and they just don't know what to do with it. So the brain's just going, hey, can we just have a grown-up here, please? Can we just have you? Can you just come closer? Because I don't know what to do with it. And what they're effectively doing, a way to think of it, is they're trying to hand us some of the emotional load. They're saying, this is too heavy. Can you jump on the end of this, please? We wouldn't think twice about a big physical load, carrying it for them, because we have an idea that, of course, parents help kids with big loads, but we have, and it may be in the back of our mind and very subtle, but an idea that to be a good parent, we have to have, and in quote commas, well-behaved children. That's rubbish. That is just not the way it is. Good parenting, or being the parents they need, is about, as much as we can, being able to respond to their distress in a way that brings them back to calm. That distress isn't a sign of bad parenting. It is not a sign of a bad child. It is a sign of a child that's struggling a bit right now.
Mm-hmm.
And even those days, and we all have them, where we yell back, or we say things, or we'll say things in an angry voice, or we'll get shouty and rousy, and then we stop and we go, oh, okay, that was a really bad parenting. What I want people to remember is, okay, we kind of wish that didn't happen, but actually instinctively, that's what your body is driving you to do. It's driving you to fight for them, but that's being turned to fighting with them. That's okay, as long as we repair as soon as we can. And those relational collisions, they won't break them as long as they're not all the time, as long as, as much as we can, we are co-regulating calmly. And as long as, when those relational collisions happen, we give them, we repair that collision, we repair that rupture. What we're actually teaching them is that they can survive those ruptures. They can survive that conflict that doesn't feel okay. We want to limit that as much as we can, but it's going to happen sometimes.
Yeah. What do you, okay, two things that I want to ask you about. When you do have a child who, let's just keep using your example of the meltdown, and maybe even a hitting meltdown over fish for dinner instead of chicken, and your child is older, how does a parent come to compassion? Do you have any tips for that? Because I think that can be really tricky. You've worked all day, you've put food on the table, and I know a lot of parents that I work with really struggle with finding empathy and compassion. Do you have any strategies for that?
So there's a lot of work on compassion and self-compassion from Kristen Neff. Now, the thing
She's been
about,
on the podcast
has
before.
she? Yeah. So
Yeah.
so I would take you back to her work, 3 mantras, or a mantra with 3 short sentences, a statement of mindfulness. This is so hard. Or whatever you're dealing with right now. I'm feeling overwhelmed right now. A statement of our common humanity. Anyone in my situation would feel like this. Everyone feels like this sometimes, whatever sentence. And then a statement of self-kindness. May I feel safe right now. May I feel compassion right now. Another quick one is take a moment, breathe in self-compassion for me, breathe out compassion for them. So you're regulating with breath. The other thing I say is to remind yourself that this is a child who is struggling right now and who needs our help. My child is struggling. I'm struggling. I can do this. My child is struggling. I'm struggling. I can do this. And just have a mantra to remind yourself. Let go in the moment of any agenda to fix it. Don't come into this trying to fix your child's feelings or fix whatever the issue is. Anchors don't fix. Anchors don't fix. Anchors just hold things steady. Our only job, and I say only, but it's a really hard job in that moment, is just to keep a safe space. That's all we need to do. Big feelings don't hurt children. Big anger won't hurt children unless they are doing something with that anger. But the emotion in itself, what hurts children is being alone in big feelings. So as long as we're there holding, and we still might need to hold the boundaries, but just remind yourself. And the other thing I say is, if you feel like your emotional backpack is full, if you can find a pause just for a little micro break, go outside, take some strong, steady breaths, stand barefoot outside, get grounded, come back, and then respond. remind yourself this will pass. This will pass.
Mm-hmm.
And we feel like when they're in big feelings or big anger, big aggression, it's easy to go, oh, everything I'm doing, it's not working. It's not working. But actually that is the work, is what we do in that moment. That is the work. And the work is they're inviting us into the opportunity to co-regulate so we can build those vital neural pathways. That is the work. It's not a sign that our work isn't working. That is the work. It's an opportunity for us to work right there. I wish that we could do just as powerful work out, and we can, of course we can, but that powerful work also happens in the moment as well, but with our strong, steady presence.
I love that so much. I love that you went to self-compassion when I asked you for tools to find more compassion for our children, because I think that's really, really key.
Yeah, yeah.
And and some children do have a harder time with this than other children do. Do
Yeah,
you have any skill building? I mean, I know co-regulation and everything that you've talked about is just probably the majority of what we want to focus on. And are there any skill building things that we can do with our children to help them in these tough moments? Like maybe outside of the tough moments that will help them in the tough moments.
yeah. I think it's really important to help them understand where their big feelings come from so that we take away any shame. We don't want them, when children feel bad, it's very easy for them to pull it into their identity. I am bad. So when they feel out of control, they feel bad, we don't want to add to that pile on by making them feel bad afterwards, which is why all those traditional disciplines, we just want to take them all off the table.
Throw them in the garbage.
Throw them in the rubbish, yep, and help them understand that everybody has big feelings. Sometimes the feelings are okay. It's what you do with it. But once you're in big feelings, it's really hard to think clearly and it's really hard to make good decisions. That's okay. That happens to everybody. What we want to do is calm the feeling part of our brain as much as we can. And the best way to do this is with strong, steady breathing. It's like a lullaby for your amygdala. So anywhere we talk about anxiety, hey warrior, I wrote it about anxiety, we use it for anger as well, because it's all the same. It's the same process. It's just the fight part. So we talk to them about what's happening in their brain. We have to say, though, when your brain is really upset, it can't do things that it's not used to. It can't do things that are unfamiliar because it's busy, because it thinks it has to protect you. It's not a broken brain. It's a brain that is working really hard to keep you safe, just at a time that you're actually not in danger, but your brain can't tell that. Brains are really smart, but they all read things wrong sometimes. So we say, what a really good thing to do is practice strong, steady breathing when you're calm before bed. Do that lots and lots and lots, so that when you start to feel yourself rising, you can take some strong, steady breaths. We also want to talk to them about the power of a pause. So when you start to feel yourself getting really upset, it's sometimes so helpful if you can just take a moment and just walk away for a moment and then come back. The situation will still be there, but you're going to have your thinking brain there, because your feeling brain will become, it's like when your feeling brain is up, your thinking brain is down, and it's the other way. When your thinking brain is on, for your thinking brain to be on, you have to make sure you've got a calm feeling brain. It might be, so I might just be going outside for a pause. It might be that they need to move. That fuel is there getting their bodies ready to move, to fight. That's what they're actually doing, and the fight is coming out in them. So do you need to just go outside and shoot some hoops, or just quickly run up and down the stairs if it's safe, or just go for a quick walk or a quick run in the yard outside, just to get rid of that fuel, and then you can come back and do it. And then we have to say, but you know what? It's like all really important things, they all take practice. And it's okay if you can't do this straight away, because I'm going to help you. We're going to work on this together. And even me, sometimes my feeling brain takes over and I say things and I get cranky and I shout when I shouldn't be shouting. So you don't have to get this right all the time. But what I want to help you with is being able to do it as much as you can. So strong, steady breathing is the big one. You can also ask for me to come in and say, And if you don't know the words, just say, Mum or Dad, I'm just having a hard time right now. What are some words? And then when you do that, I'll say, okay, I can see you're having a hard time. Do you want to come and sit with me? And then we'll just both, I will help you feel better in that moment. So there's just those strategies, but we have to remember breathing is the big one. We have to remember they're just not going to be able to do it when they're in big feelings unless they've practiced it. But the true biggest one is co-regulation. So it's not even about what we teach them, it's about what we do with them. And by co-regulating over and over and over, we're actually teaching them, we're actually bringing their nervous systems back to calm, we're strengthening that pathway in the brain so they can do it themselves. Another really lovely one to co-regulate with, to practice their breathing, is back to back. So they have you sit down, have them sit down and say, okay, lean into me. So you're literally supporting them on the ground. And then you say, okay, I'm going to take some strong, steady breaths. You match my breathing. And then you breathe in, because they can feel the rise and fall of you, they will match your breathing. And that's another way to co-regulate. When they're in big fury, they're not going to be interested in that. So that's just a strategy to teach them. And you can say, when you start to get angry, maybe that's something we can do together. If I can, I will always try to do that. I'm not always going to be able to do it if I've got dinner, if I'm holding the baby, whatever it is. But I'll always do it whenever I can. But it's a way you can practice with them as well.
There's someone in my membership who has an older child, and we've talked about this a lot. And he's I think he's 8 or 9, and she's admitted that she could work some on their connection, she can work some on their co-regulation, and I think she's pretty decent at that. I think, of course, we always have room to grow, but she says they have talked to her son so many times about practicing some of these tools of taking breaths, and he's always keen when he's not upset.
Yeah.
But then when he gets upset, he refuses to use any of the strategies that they've taught him. Do you have any tips for that situation?
Yeah. So what we have to remember, anything we teach goes into the thinking brain at the front. As soon as the feeling brain at the back gets upset, it shuts down the thinking brain. And this is because if our lives are truly in danger, it doesn't want us doing thinking brain things, learning, thinking through consequences, planning, making deliberate decisions. It shifts us to impulse and instinct, and that's the amygdala. So the amygdala is in charge of the brain. So that's going to be really normal. And this is why, we teach them the things, but it's going to take time. The thinking brain, where all this information in the thinking brain is actually the part of the brain that can calm the amygdala, doesn't even really come online for full development until they're 6 or 7. It won't be fully developed until they're early to mid-20s for girls and closer to 30 for boys. So we've got decades to get this right. We've got decades to get this right. And it's not a bad difference. It's a good difference. There are reasons for both. But what I would say is, the more you can practice these things when he's calm, and it has to be practiced. So we have to practice breathing. We have to practice the strategies you've given, grounding strategies. Look around. What are 5 things you can see, 4 things you can hear, 3 things you can feel outside your body, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste, or they can use colours or letters if they know letters. That all has to be practiced over and over and over when they're calm, because they will never be able to use these strategies for the first time, because the storage room for these strategies, the thinking brain, the feeling brain, when it's upset, shuts it down. And that happens so quickly. So this is why co-regulation, just keep doing that. I know we are in a hurry for them to do it, but
keep trying.
Just keep doing it, because it takes a long time to build those pathways. It's like they don't just pick up a pencil and start to write. The only way they write is by doing it over and over and over. Same with riding a bike, anything they do. Driving a car, we don't just talk to them about how to drive a car. We do it for a long, long time. The same part of the brain they use to regulate, is the thinking brain, is the same part of the brain they use to cross the road. So we cross the road with, and I'm in a busy road, over and over and over and over. And even when we think they're ready, we still stand guard and just say, oh, it's okay. We'll do that. And then we'll slowly pull back. But they can't learn to cross a busy road unless we've crossed it lots with them and unless we've been there with them. We wouldn't just send out, an 8-year-old on a really busy road, and expect them to know how to cross it. That's all thinking brain stuff. It's the same with regulation. They won't be able to use it when they're in big feelings. So we have to practice it when they're calm, co-regulate, build those pathways, and that actually is the way we teach them to self-regulate, that co-regulation. So, and some kids are just born with, bigger feelings, different
Yeah.
temperaments. And we want big kids. Feelings move us into action. These will be the kids who actually affect big change in their families, in their social groups, in the world, their communities, the world around them. We want this. This is really hard to parent sometimes, right?
Yeah.
But
So true.
what we want to do is not get rid of the feelings, but help the feelings come back to calm enough so they can have thinking brain capacity as well. But that's going to take time. So practice it lots when they're calm. Let go of any expectation that they're going to be able to do it when they're in big feelings, because that moment, they're not looking for the strategies. They're looking for another nervous system, your system, to come and actually give the brain the experience of coming back to calm. So co-regulation is the strategy. It's not like
It's the key.
it is the key. It's not like we're holding space until they just can do it themselves. It actually is the point. It is the work that we do with them.
I love that. I love how you talked about the different roles for the thinking brain and the amygdala. I was just talking to a client today who has an 8-year-old who she talked about 2 different examples of him getting really, really upset and frustrated when he was trying to do something. One, when he was trying to practice his piano, and he was just getting very, very upset, but insisting on continuing to try. And another, he wanted pancakes by himself, but he was having trouble with the mixing or a recipe or something. And both of those instances, I said, you've got to tell him amygdalas don't know how to make pancakes. So you've got to give yourself a break and get back into your thinking brain, because only thinking brains know how to make pancakes. Amygdalas can't make pancakes.
They
So I just,
can't make pancakes. That's right. And what's
yeah,
happening in that moment? The amygdala is going, "Oh my gosh, bud, this is something really important, and I'm worried you're going to mess it up, or I'm worried you're going to miss out on pancakes. I think maybe we should just run away from here. So I'm going to give you all this super body fuel so you can run away, okay? Because I don't think this is going to be good, because if you mess it up, this is going to be really, really, really bad. And I know you're really great, but what if you mess it up?" And so that messing something up, missing out on something important, their body is being fueled to get ready to run. But if there's no opportunity, or to leave it, to walk away, but if there's no it's like the brain can't tell if he's making pancakes or fighting a bear. The brain can't tell.
yeah,
And that's beautiful. I love that. Your amygdala doesn't know how to make pancakes. So it's saying, can we just leave this? Can we just leave this? Because this is feeling bad. Can you just put it down and run away from here? And he's going, no, I want to keep doing it. His amygdala is getting more and more upset. That's actually what's happening. And I think when we help make the amygdala really friendly and make this really approachable, it strips any shame and helps them understand what's happening, and that in itself stops driving anxiety about the anxiety, or anxiety about the feeling that they're or whatever they're going through.
Hey Warrior is so good for that, for showing the amygdala as your friend, the fuzzy warrior. I love it. Well, thank you so much. This has been so great and so wonderful, and just, fits in so well with everything that I teach in my community. And I'm just so grateful for all of your knowledge. Before I let you go, I want to ask you the question that I ask all my guests, which is, if you could go back in time to your younger parent self, what advice would you give yourself?
Oh my gosh, let go of needing well-behaved kids. Let go of it. Because, and as soon as you said that, that's exactly where I went. Because the more we have an agenda that our children need to be well-behaved, the less available we actually are when they are in big feelings and are in big behavior, and the more likely we are to actually do the opposite of what the brain needs, which is for us to just come in. So I'd say let go of an agenda. And by well-behaved, I'm doing that in quotes, the idea of what kids should be. Let go. Just take all of those people speaking on your shoulder about what parents should be like and what children should be like. And I will say my children are 20 and 25 now, and my stepdaughter's 30. So this was a long, long time ago, before we knew what we know now. And it was still about timeouts, which I couldn't even do then. It was just not right. And consequences and punishment never felt right. It never felt right. And even my daughter last year said, "Mum, you never punished us." And I said, I never needed to. I just never needed to, because I wanted to stay close to you and bring you close. And as a result, they're big kids now who, they still mess up, but beautiful big kids with beautiful big lives who mess up. But now I hear about most of them. I'm sure I don't hear about all the messes. And that's what we want to do. And even though I did let go, to them, I didn't do those things. But in my mind, the number of times I said, "Oh, your children are there angry, they're screaming, they're doing this. Oh, you're a bad mum," or "Oh, you're, this idea of what they should look like." I wish I could go back and say, "No, we actually had it wrong. That's exactly what parenting looks like. It looks like the messiness and the loudness and the bigness. That's exactly what it is, because that is what calls us in to do the job of parenting, which is to be compassionate, have empathy, to regulate, so they can become adults who can regulate, be compassionate, have empathy, and do the things that we need them to do. It's all in us. It's all in us.
So excellent. Thank you so much, Karen. Can you just tell our listeners, we'll put some links in the show notes as well, but can you tell our listeners the best place to find out more about you and what you do?
Yeah. So my website, heysigmund.com, www.heysigmund, HEYSIGM for Mary, UND. That's my website with articles, videos, courses. Anywhere I'm speaking is there. But also, I would say probably for one of the best resources that I have is actually Instagram, on Facebook.
Okay.
Everything on Instagram goes on Facebook, but they're bite-sized tiles where you can just look at, get a bite, and do what you need. So it's all information about just grabs on anxiety, anger, big feelings, parenting generally, or Facebook. It's Karen Young, Hey Sigmund, and I'm always posting there. So that's probably the best place. And the books, which are also on the website.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode. I hope you found this conversation insightful and exactly what you needed in this moment. Be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Remember that I'm rooting for you. I see you out there showing up for your kids and doing the best you can. Sending hugs over the airwaves today. Hang in there. You've got this.